Okay, so you sent over this really interesting article.
Uh-huh.
It's from Cognitive Market Research, and it's about Adobe,
Right.
buying Figma back in 2022.
Right, right.
And it was a huge deal, like literally $20 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, $20 billion. So
That's a big number.
it is. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
And so we really need to kind of look at why Adobe.
Okay.
Adobe's like this giant in the industry.
Right, yeah.
And Figma's, they're newer.
Yeah.
And
Quick check,
they
yeah.
represent something different. So we're going to look at why they did this.
I see.
What it means for the whole industry, like for
Right.
design and software.
Yeah.
And then why it even matters to, someone like you or me.
That's the most important thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Why should we care?
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right in. The article kind of focuses on a few reasons why Adobe went after Figma.
Okay.
First, it seems like Figma was really shaking things up in UI UX design. And they did that, mainly with this cloud-based platform. Now for maybe if someone's not super familiar with this, UI is user interface. So that's how a product looks and feels.
Yeah.
And then UX is user experience. So
More like how you interact with it.
yeah, exactly. How it feels to use it.
Okay.
And Figma was changing the game for that.
Totally.
So
basically, they changed, the whole thing really changed because they were browser-based.
Okay.
So it went from you're designing by yourself on your own computer
Right.
to suddenly it's in the cloud.
Uh-huh.
So everyone's working together at the same time, in real time.
Gotcha.
And I think that's the key here.
Yeah.
Because teams are all remote now, right?
Right, yeah. Think about how many people need to...
Stakeholders, clients.
Yeah, everybody needs to...
Look at the designs, give feedback.
Exactly.
And Figma was just built for that from the beginning.
Yeah, and the article really stresses that this wasn't just a small change. This was a completely different way of working.
It's totally different, yeah.
And it seems like people loved it, right?
Uh-huh.
Figma got super popular super fast, especially with startups.
Yeah, startups love them.
Yeah.
Tech companies, anybody who is moving quickly.
Right, and even the big companies, the enterprises.
The enterprises, yeah.
Yeah.
Once they caught on, they were like, wow, this is how we need to be working.
Totally.
And it wasn't just designers.
Right.
I mean, you had developers using it.
Oh, interesting.
Product managers, people who, traditionally weren't using Adobe product.
Right. Yeah.
But now they're all in the same space working together.
So it was breaking down those walls.
Exactly. It was you don't just design something and then throw it over to the developer.
Right.
They're in there from the beginning,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So
fewer mistakes.
yeah.
Things move faster.
Exactly. So Adobe saw this and they're like, okay, we need to get in on this.
We got to get in on this, yeah.
All these new users, this new way of working.
Exactly.
And the article also mentioned how Figma's everyone working together in real time.
Yeah.
That could actually work really well with Adobe's Creative Cloud, which they already have.
Yeah.
So they could kind of combine those things.
It's all about the synergy.
Yeah.
Right. You could have a designer in Photoshop making something beautiful.
Okay.
And then, boom, it's right there in Figma.
Gotcha.
Ready for the UI UX people to use it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No more emailing files back and forth. It's
Yeah.
all seamless.
Exactly. But let's be real for a second. Part of this was also Adobe
Yeah.
kind of protecting themselves, right?
Yeah.
Figma was becoming a real competitor
Oh, yeah.
to Adobe XD, their own product.
Big time.
And the article even says Adobe basically eliminated a threat.
It's a classic move, right?
Yeah. It's okay, you're too good, so we're going to...
If you can't beat them, buy them.
Yeah, exactly. But it does make you think, right? About how competition works,
Yeah.
When someone comes in and does something new.
Disrupts the market.
Yeah, exactly. The big companies, they have a few choices, right?
Right.
They can try to be more innovative themselves.
Step up their game.
Yeah, they can fight back directly.
Got to compete head to head.
Or they can just buy the competition.
Yeah, that's the acquisition route.
Right.
And that's what Adobe chose.
Yeah. And it gets rid of the competitor, but does it help innovation in the long run?
That's the big question.
Yeah, that's the question, right? Is this good for, the people using these products?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Something to think about.
It is. Okay, so moving on, market research.
Okay.
This was huge in Adobe's decision. The article really emphasizes this.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You got to know what's going on the market.
Exactly.
You got to know what people want.
And the research showed that cloud-based design, this is the future.
It was already happening.
Yeah.
But the pandemic, everyone working from home,
Yeah, everyone's remote.
that really accelerated it.
Totally.
It wasn't just nice to have anymore. It was like, you need this to survive.
You gotta have it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about better tools. It was about, like you said,
Collaboration.
yeah,
Teams working together no matter where they are.
exactly. And businesses were demanding that.
They're like, we need this.
They were looking for those tools.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Adobe, they were probably doing their own research too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Internally and seeing the same things.
Absolutely.
Even though Creative Cloud, it's still super popular.
Still the big dog.
Yeah, they were probably seeing that more and more, especially big companies.
Enterprises.
Yeah, they wanted these web-based tools.
They wanted that real-time collaboration.
Yeah.
And Figma was like the leader in that space.
It just made sense for them, right?
Yeah, made perfect sense.
And the market research, it wasn't just about what was happening now. It was about the future.
Yeah, the projection.
Now, how big is this market going to get?
And it's only getting bigger.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Adobe, they saw that and they were like,
We got to be a part of this.
we got to get Figma.
Got to be at the forefront.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the competition, right?
Right. The competitive landscape.
Figma and other cloud-based tools, they were gaining ground.
Especially with younger designers.
Yeah, the ones who grew up with this stuff.
The digital natives.
Exactly.
They get it.
They get it.
They're like, why would I go back to the old way of doing things?
Yeah. And Adobe, they saw that and they're like,
We got to appeal to these people.
we got to get them on board.
Yeah,
So I think we've kind of established the why behind this, right?
I think so.
Adobe wanted to be the leader in the cloud. They wanted all those new users, those new markets.
Right.
They wanted to have this whole suite of tools.
The complete package.
Yeah, exactly. And they wanted to, kind of neutralize the competition.
Eliminate the threat.
Right. And all of this was based on data.
On research.
Solid market research.
Exactly. But it wasn't just a smooth ride, right?
Oh, no.
This deal, it got a lot of scrutiny.
Oh, yeah. A lot of scrutiny.
From, regulators and the industry itself.
Absolutely.
So, Adobe, they're already a big player.
Huge.
In the design world.
Yeah.
So when they wanted to buy Figma,
Right.
the people in charge, the antitrust authorities.
The ones who make sure there's fair competition.
Exactly.
They're like, hold on a second. Let's take a closer look at this.
Yeah, they were worried that this deal, it would, limit competition.
Right.
Less choice for designers.
Yeah.
And maybe even less innovation.
Exactly. Because if one company controls too much,
Yeah.
it can stifle innovation, right?
Right, because they don't have to try as hard.
Exactly.
They're like, we're the only game in town.
Why rock the boat? Yeah, exactly. And the people who were against the deal, they were really vocal,
Yeah, they had some valid points.
They were worried about innovation being stifled, like we said.
Less choice for designers.
Yeah, and they were worried about Figma's users too, right?
Yeah, Figma had built this amazing community.
Yeah.
Very loyal, very engaged.
And they were worried about what would happen to that.
Would Adobe change things?
Yeah.
Would they lose that, agile, community-driven spirit?
Exactly. They were worried about, the features they loved. Would they stay the same?
Would Figma still be Figma?
Right. And would it still be affordable?
Yeah, pricing was a big concern.
Right. Because Figma was, relatively affordable.
Relatively, yeah.
Compared to Adobe's, whole Creative Cloud subscription.
Which could be expensive.
Yeah. So they were worried that they'd have to, pay more.
Or be forced into a bigger subscription.
Yeah, exactly. One they didn't really need.
Yeah.
So Adobe, they tried to reassure everyone.
They had to.
Yeah, they said Figma would still be independent.
At least for a while.
Yeah, and that they were committed to keeping what was good about Figma.
Taking the core strengths.
Yeah, and using Adobe's resources to make it even better.
Yeah, that was the message.
But the article points out no one really knows
Right.
what's going to happen long term.
I hear him, yeah.
What's the roadmap for Figma?
What's going to change?
What's going to happen to the pricing?
Will it stay independent?
Yeah, all those questions.
Big questions.
And we're a little further down the line now.
We are.
So what's happening?
Well, there's probably a lot of work going on behind the scenes.
Okay.
Figuring out how to integrate Figma with Adobe's other products.
Right, like Photoshop and all that.
Yeah, Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects.
And that could be a good thing, right?
It could be.
Making it easier to use those tools together.
Smoother workflows.
Yeah.
Less back and forth.
Exactly. And this whole thing, it's part of a bigger trend, right?
Okay.
All these companies are merging,
Consolidation.
yeah, in the design world and in software in general.
It's all about digital-first solutions now.
Right, because everyone's online.
Everyone's online.
Everyone's collaborating.
Exactly.
So it makes sense that these companies are trying to, like, get bigger.
They got to stay competitive.
Yeah, and offer everything in one place.
The whole package.
Exactly. And what about Adobe XD?
Ah, the big question mark.
Right, like what happens to that now?
Yeah, they said they'll support it for now, but
Yeah.
for how long?
Yeah, it seems kind of vague, right?
Very vague.
Like they just bought the biggest competitor.
Exactly.
So what's the point of keeping XD around?
Right. Why have two products that do basically the same thing?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Maybe they'll find a niche for it,
Maybe.
but I think a lot of people are skeptical.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Definitely.
But the article's main point, I think, is that for this deal to really work,
Yeah.
Adobe needs to be careful with Figma's users.
They can't alienate them.
Exactly, because they're the ones who made Figma successful.
They're the heart and soul of the community.
Right, and if Adobe messes with that,
It could backfire.
big time, yeah. So let's just recap, right?
Okay.
This whole acquisition, $20 billion.
Huge.
It was a massive move by Adobe
Yeah.
to be the leader in cloud-based design.
Absolutely.
And they were driven by, what the market was doing.
The data.
Yeah, the competition and the needs of designers.
The evolving needs.
Exactly. And all of this was based on,
Market research.
yeah, solid research. But it's not all clear skies, right?
Well,
There's still a lot of debate
lots of questions.
about competition
Significant.
and what Figma's future is going to look like.
Long term, yeah.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
What does this whole thing tell us about the future of, like, creative software?
Mhm.
You've got these huge companies.
The giants.
Yeah, and you've got these smaller companies, the disruptors.
The innovators.
How do they all work together?
It's a constant dance.
It is.
Back and forth.
And what's the next big change going to be in, like, how we design
Yeah.
digital products? Like, how are we going to be working in 5 years?
It's exciting to think about.
It is.
So much potential.
It is. So, yeah, think about that and how it might affect you,
Absolutely.
in your work, in your life.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It is. And thanks so much for sharing this article with us.
My pleasure.
This was a really, really deep dive
It was.
into a super important moment
Yeah.
in the design world.
A real turning point.
It really was. So thanks again.
Anytime.
And thanks to all of you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you next time.
See you later.